We'll take an extended look at Lawrence County's history.
We're live.
We're local.
The County Line starts now. Good evening and welcome to the County Line. I'm Allison King.
And I'm Jeremiah Patterson. 4 Westminster College students are home recovering from influenza. The College Health Center tested 16 students yesterday as flu symptoms have traveled throughout the student body. Health Center Director Judy Duda says 4 of those students tested positive and were then sent home. The center also tested those 4 students a second time for the H1N1 virus.
So far, the Health Center has reported no cases of the H1N1 virus or swine flu. Test results can take between 3 and 7 days. Duda says the Health Center will continue to keep campus updated as it receives additional information. Meanwhile, campus community members can access a link from the westminster.edu homepage for online updates.
Duda says a plan is in place should a student be diagnosed with H1N1. The student then has a choice of returning home for recovery. Duda encourages students to take certain precautions to avoid illness. She says to wash hands often, avoid touching your eyes, nose, or mouth, and to avoid close contact with those who are sick.
And Westminster College is still receiving visits from its newest commuter, a medium-sized black bear. Though he doesn't pay tuition, people have still spotted the bear roaming through campus just like any other student. The County Line's Scott Lawrence has one faculty member's eyewitness account.
At Westminster College, it's not unusual to see plenty of wildlife scurrying across the campus. But this week, one local resident got the chance to bear witness to a unique wildlife spotting.
Tuesday morning, I was coming into Old 77 to work out about 5:30 in the morning. And as I came down Beechwood Drive and turned left and started up the hill, I saw the bear. He was about in the middle of the road crossing the street. And he walked right up Bernie Bonney's driveway, which is just on the other side of the street.
Edmonston's encounter is the second reported sighting at the college in less than 2 weeks. Westminster Public Safety Director William Brandt cautions students and residents from getting too close to the bears.
Stay away from it. Don't go near it. Let it be. More than likely, it's going to take off running once it sees humans.
With over 15,000 black bears in the Pennsylvania region alone, it's no surprise to see one popping up in the area, especially in a campus setting with so much food waste.
We've seen a bear 2 times, and it's usually in the McClure Run area, probably going through the trash and so forth, looking for food.
According to the New Wilmington Police Department, there have been no bear sightings reported since Tuesday. But if borough residents do happen to run into a bear that's causing damage or trouble, they're encouraged to notify police immediately. I'm Scott Lawrence reporting for the County Line.
Pennsylvanians are killed each year trespassing at mines and quarries. I'm Kathleen McGinty, Secretary of Environmental Protection. Riding old mine sites and diving in abandoned quarries may look like fun, but those joyrides are suicide missions, and that diving is about dying. Emergency responders risk their lives on dangerous search and rescue missions. Mines and quarries are not playgrounds. They can kill you. Stay out and stay alive.
Tomorrow marks the 8-year anniversary of the tragic events of September 11th. The County Line's Kylie Bennett talks with some Westminster students who recall their reactions to the attacks that day.
I was in the 5th grade and I was only 10 years old when the attacks of September 11th happened.
I was in 4th grade and I was about 9 years old.
I was 9 years old and I was in 5th grade.
At the time, I really didn't understand what was going on because I was in 5th grade.
At the time of the events of 9/11, I was in art class, and I had to run back to the room for some reason. And I walked in, and I saw the news on, and I just saw a lot of smoke and a lot of things going across the screen, and I saw my teacher at her desk crying. And the rest of my class came in a few minutes later, and nobody knew what was going on, and a lot of teachers were gathering in the back to talk about what was happening. And all I remember after that was our principal came on the loudspeaker and tried to explain to us what was going on, but we were just elementary kids, so we didn't really understand it all. And then after that, we all went into the hallway and prayed for the victims of 9/11.
I remember I was in English class, it was reading class, and teachers came in and told my teacher that something had happened. And next thing I knew, a big TV was wheeled into the classroom and everybody started watching. Then we went to computer class and everybody started watching, and like our computer teacher explained, like he was trying to get on the internet to get more information, and everybody was trying to get more information that the server was like overloaded, so he couldn't get on, and we watched it for the rest of the day.
We weren't allowed to go outside for recess that day. They told us that there was killer bees on the playground, so that was their excuse for not letting us go out for recess.
When I found out about the attacks, I was in the stairwell going to the top floor for my literary arts class, and they came over the announcements and said there had been an attack in New York City with the Twin Towers. And I recall only one boy in my class knowing what the Twin Towers even were. I have no one who was directly affected, but my prayers are with those who did.
The Newcastle YMCA is having their annual fundraiser dinner on September 17th, honoring a local Newcastle resident for his years of service. The County Line's Laurel Sprague tells us about the YMCA's Salute to Courage dinner and their honoree.
For the past 5 years, the Newcastle Community YMCA has held the Salute to Courage dinner in efforts to fundraise scholarship money for kids and families in need. Each year, they select one particular individual who has impacted the Newcastle community in a positive way. This year, that individual is Larry Wilcox.
Director of Marketing Lenise Nacella tells us exactly what makes this award so unique.
Larry Wilcox was chosen by our committee because of the impact that he made on the community despite his many illnesses. Without him, we would not have drug and alcohol services that we now have in the community.
An overview of Wilcox's achievements will be shown during the evening. This annual YMCA event will contribute to the anticipated $250,000 in scholarship money the YMCA hopes to raise this year.
The Salute to Courage fundraiser is to provide scholarship funding for youth and families in our community who may not be able to afford YMCA programs and services. So actually right now in our community there are 17% of our membership that is on some type of financial assistance.
The Salute for Courage dinner will be held on September 17th at 5:15 p.m. at the Villa Banquet Center. For any questions regarding ticketing, be sure to call the Newcastle YMCA. Reporting for the County Line, I'm Laurel Sprague.
This week marks the one-year anniversary of the windstorm that ripped through Orange counties and surrounding areas. It took Penn Power more than a week to restore electricity knocked out by the storm. At the height of the outage, more than 60,000 customers in Lawrence and Mercer counties were left in the dark. Titan Radio, along with the New Wilmington Borough cable television system, continued running on emergency power that week.
And when we come back, we'll take an extended look at Lawrence County's history.
Smoke it before you give it a try. Only you. Don't play with Don't play with fire. 'Cause there's not a miracle in our dreams outright. Nothing very nice on a homeless night. So the gorgeous force is what you decide. Don't play with matches. Don't play with fire.
Only you can prevent forest fires.
Fire.
Documentaries have redefined the art of storytelling, and history can come to life through the visual medium of video.
Westminster graduate Nikki Pizar recently produced a documentary that traces Lawrence County's historical roots throughout the years, from when the Native Americans roamed this land to the official founding of the county, to the industrial movement and beyond.
Their immune system was not strong enough to fight off these diseases. And of course, a lot of the Europeans died from these diseases as well.
They're at the southern end of Mercer County, the northern end of Beaver County, and I think that what they perceived was the need to get a county seat for themselves so they could help people get to Newcastle.
You don't know what it's like till you're in it. And everybody thought, we're going to go and fight this war. 3 months, we'll be back home. We'll be heroes. We'll marry our girlfriends, be happy, settle down, and eventually become the grand old man who saved the Union, living up on the house on the hill.
Going to look for a job meant taking your lunchbox with you in the morning, because good chances are you were going to find something and be employed that day.
More than 14,000 years ago, Lawrence County was covered by the Wisconsin Glacier, creating the area's rushing creeks, rugged valleys, and rolling hills. The Native Americans roamed the lands as early as 8,000 BC. They were nomadic, following the herds.
They were the hunters and gatherers. They didn't have any tools other than a few projectile points and some flint knives.
Over time, they developed a special spear called the atlatl, which allowed hunters to throw with more power and distance. By 1000 BC, the Native Americans began to establish their own villages.
We refer to them as the Monongahela people, the people that lived here before the Europeans came here.
The Monongahela Indians farmed the land, growing corn, beans, and squash. The people also used stone to create pottery, axes, hammers, and grinding tools, as well as projectile points for their spears and arrows.
And they did a lot of pounding, a lot of pecking, a lot of grinding, and a lot of polishing to make those. And the hours they put into those things must have been tremendous.
The Native Americans also built large mounds in the earth for burial and ceremonial purposes. But as early as 1550, their influence started to fade as Europeans settled the land. 100 years later, the Monongahela people disappeared. Many speculate because of disease brought here by the Europeans. However, another tribe called the Delaware Indians moved into Lawrence County from the east.
Legend has it here at Slippery Rock Creek that a group of Native Americans were chasing after a European settler. And when they came to the water, they attempted to cross, but instead they slipped on rocks like these. Chasing after the European lifestyle would later lead to the Native Americans' demise.
Newcastle was called the Kuskusky Villages. There were 3 main villages in the Kuskusky Villages, and it was a hub.
The Delaware Indians were fascinated by the Europeans' tools and goods, but this interest would cause the Native Americans to slowly lose their identity, and by 1760, many tribes had been forced to move west. While some Native American families continued to linger in present-day Lawrence County at the turn of the 19th century, European settlers began to dominate the area and develop the land. Many relied on farming to make a living.
One of the things you had was donation and bounty lands, and what occurred was you were either given the land as a soldier, or you were given the land as a, you bought the land off of one of the land trading companies.
Newcastle was the first town to be laid out. Surveyor John Carlisle Stewart arrived in 1798 and plotted the original layout of close to 50 acres. However, the town would soon outgrow these limits. In 1825, Newcastle officially became a borough with fewer than 300 residents, but 25 years later, more than 1,500 people called Newcastle home.
The cities are set along rivers, and when the canals came through, you're going to find that a lot of these cities came into their own power.
The canals allowed companies to bring in iron ore and carry out products from local factories. Just as Newcastle remains the political center in Lawrence County today, the city is tied to the root of the county's formation.
This is the line that now separates Lawrence and Mercer counties. However, this wasn't always the case, as Mercer County used to cover the land south of here, near Newcastle.
Newcastle was split between Mercer County to the north and Beaver County to the south, causing political problems for the thriving community. Political leaders pushed for the creation of a new county with Newcastle as its headquarters throughout the 1830s and 40s, but they were met with great opposition and a formal petition against the plan.
I think that's one of those things that people would understand completely if they lived in the time. I mean, it's a tax base. That's how things were.
But that would all change in 1847 when David Sankey was elected to the state senate. With his efforts and others' help, an act creating Lawrence County was passed and signed by Governor William Johnston on April 5, 1849.
It was considered a political victory that Lawrence County was even started.
The mid to late 1800s brought a new era for those in Lawrence County. The Civil War broke out and many were quick to respond, even men with little combat experience.
Most of the people who were from here were very, very patriotic, and most of the people who were in weren't trained. They had no experience. You suddenly become a captain or a lieutenant or even a colonel and never have been in uniform before in your life.
4,000 men from the area served in the Northern Army out of the 20,000 people that lived in the county during that time. And nearly 500 of those soldiers lost their lives.
The casualties in the Civil War were greater than any war the country had ever fought and has ever fought since. It staggers the imagination.
2 units were mostly made up of men from Lawrence County, the 43rd Regiment Battery B 1st Artillery, and the 100th Infantry Regiment known as the Roundheads.
The infantry was the most numerous branch of the service at that time. Cavalry and artillery were much smaller. Cavalry was a smaller group than the artillery.
Local residents also took on leadership roles in the war, including Dr. Daniel Leisure, a physician from Newcastle. He recruited the Roundheads Regiment and later would serve as the colonel for the unit.
While those from Lawrence County were fighting for freedom on the battlefield, others at home were helping fugitive slaves find freedom. Right here in the heart of New Wilmington, the Tavern Inn is believed to have been part of the Underground Railroad.
Yeah, the Underground Railroad had several stations in this region. There were a number of other homes in the area. Farmhouses were very good because you had barns where you could put people in and had lots of food available to take care of them there. And also it was more remote and more difficult for the slaveholders to find.
Lawrence County found another way to help out from the home front. People were busy making goods for the troops. And Furnace Hill in New Wilmington originally housed the Fremont Iron Furnace. Workers fired the furnace using charcoal from timber in the surrounding area to make ammunitions for the Union Army. Lawrence County's earliest industries developed from settlers' needs for metal goods, boosting the area's iron production. Having been covered by lush forests before people transformed the countryside, the land was rich in natural resources.
Western Pennsylvania sits on a number of fossil fuels that would become very important in the late 19th century and early 20th century.
The tin plate industry also grew rapidly in Newcastle thanks to the passing of the McKinley Tariff in 1892. The The act helped increase domestic production by raising taxes on imported goods.
From a very small operation, we grew to a point that about 1920, we had 60 operating hot mills in Newcastle itself. And we were on the way to becoming one of the fastest growing cities per capita in the United States.
Another important local resource was limestone. Companies utilized limestone as a flux in the steelmaking process, allowing the materials to burn at a higher temperature and a faster rate. This created a more quality steel for constructing bridges and large buildings.
Now, Newcastle itself had its Carnegie Steel Works. In 1901, all those local mills became part of what became U.S. Steel. And U.S. Steel became the largest manufacturer in the United States at that time.
5 major railroads shipped goods in and out, making Newcastle an industrial might and drawing people to the area.
The manpower, the work power came from all walks of life, all over the world actually. Southern Europe, people were coming here in droves because they wanted opportunities that they basically could not find at home.
The factories relied on a large number of workers, so when U.S. Steel closed its stores throughout the county in 1939, the loss hit the community hard.
That decision brought on an unemployment rate that has never been topped. Lawrence County had 52% of the population on direct assistance.
Manufacturing eventually would pick up again at the dawn of World War II, but this time industry took a different route.
We could no longer live basically on one giant manufacturer, that there would have to be a diversification of industry.
While industrialization continued to change and develop here in Lawrence County, the area's first industry of agriculture still remained the #1 big business.
Technology also changed farming and made it more efficient.
A lot of the farmers do both. They have day jobs and they still farm as well. But the days of U.S. Steel and the Greer Tin Mill and the pottery, those days are done. Lawrence County, and really all of western Pennsylvania, has had to find a future and just change its way of doing business.
Remember, if there's ever an emergency, we meet here at the bottom of the driveway.
And I'll get the emergency disaster kit out of the kitchen.
Once we're all together, then we'll decide what to do.
But what about Fido?
What about Fido? The Lawrence County Humane Society reminds you to include your pets in your disaster planning. Make sure that your pets have identification tags that include
Good evening, sports fans, and welcome to this year's inaugural edition of Titantown Sports. I'm Matt Ogden. The Titans were in action this past Saturday as they hosted non-conference foes, the Heidelberg Student Princes, at Harold Berry Stadium. The Titans were in action at Harold Berry Stadium this past Saturday, hosting the Heidelberg Student Princes. They were looking to extend their 7-game undefeated streak on the Ural turf surface, but they were going to have to do it without their star running back Nick McCloskey out with a high ankle sprain. The defense started it off for the Titans in the first when Jordan Rooney picks off Heidelberg's quarterback Andrew Miller around midfield, returning it 21 yards to the Heidelberg 28. The Titans wouldn't be able to punch it in, but would have to settle for a Trevor Young 30-yard field goal, giving the Titans the early lead 3-0. We pick it up in the second with Heidelberg's defense putting more than just pressure on Titans quarterback Kevin Franz. Heidelberg's Sam Driscoll comes untouched backside of Franz, and he's bringing the wood, causing the fumble, and it's picked up by Justin Dawson. Scoop and score. Dawson has himself a 60-yard fumble recovery for a touchdown. Student Princes up 7-3. The Titans would score 2 more touchdowns before halftime, Heidelberg only scoring 1, putting the halftime score at 17-14 in favor of the Titans. In the third, Miller's getting into his groove. He finds a quarterback's best friend, the 6'4" wide receiver Mike Preston, not once, but twice, leaving the Titans secondary in the dust, totaling over 131 total yards and 2 touchdowns on those 2 passes, which would prove to be the difference in the game. The Titans start the season off with a loss and end their streak at home. Final score, Heidelberg 42, Westminster 26. The Titans look to even their record as they travel to Allegheny College on Saturday to take on the Gators under the lights. Kickoff is set for 7:30. You can catch all the action on our sister station, Titan Radio Digital 88.9 FM. Other Titan athletes were in action this past week. The women's tennis team is sitting pretty, literally, as they are undefeated at 3-0 after they blanked Chatham College this past Monday by a count of 9-0. The team is also boasting the PAC Women's Tennis Player of the Week, Hillary Newman, who shut out her opponent this past Monday in straight sets. The men and women's cross-country teams also had their first meet this past Saturday, the Fisher Invitational. Both teams just missed medal status, respectively. The women's team placed 5th out of 11 teams, and the men's were right behind them with a 6th-place finish. The next time they will be in action is next Saturday, the 19th, as they both travel to Penn State Barron Invitational. The Titans women's volleyball team looks to stop their skid and live up to their preseason PAC champion ranking as they travel to Worcester for several games throughout the weekend, and they look to improve from their current record of 1-3. The women's soccer team is looking to even their record at 2-2 after their 1-0 shutout win this past Saturday. They host Shenandoah tomorrow evening. And the defending PAC champion men's soccer team is looking to bounce back from a tough loss to Carnegie Mellon Tuesday by a count of 4-1 to the Tartans. They travel to the University of Pittsburgh at Johnstown on Saturday looking for their 3rd win of the season. And this week's SAC Athlete of the Week is Aaron Zavora. Aaron, a junior soccer player from Norwin High School, scored 2 goals on 8 shots over the course of 3 games, including the game-winning goal at Pitt Bradford last week. Congratulations, Aaron. Now on to pro sports. We also like to congratulate the Pirates as they set a Major League sports record, officially cementing their 17th straight losing season earlier this week. They are in action again tomorrow evening as they travel to Houston to take on the Astros. Moving over to Cleveland, the Indians, only 2 years removed from the American League Championship Series, aren't doing much better as they look to take on the Royals at Progressive Field in Kansas City. As the NFL season kicks off this evening, the defending Super Bowl champions play their first game tonight, and the Pittsburgh Steelers are that team. After defeating Ken Whisenhunt and the Arizona Cardinals last season in Super Bowl 43 in breathtaking fashion to win an NFL record 6th World Championship. They host the Towel Stompin' Tennessee Titans with kickoff set for 8:30 this evening. Moving on to Cleveland again, the Browns will begin their season on Sunday as they welcome superstar running back Adrian Peterson and recently unretired quarterback Brett Favre and the rest of the Minnesota Vikings squad. The Browns look to improve from last season with a new head coach Eric Mangini and newly anointed starting quarterback and hometown boy Brady Quinn. Kickoff is set for 1 p.m. Well, that's all the sports for this week. You stay classy, Lawrence County, and stay tuned for more County Line right here on WCN.
Pennsylvanians are killed each year trespassing at mines and quarries. I'm Kathleen McGinty, Secretary of Environmental Protection. Riding old mine sites and diving in abandoned quarries may look like fun, but those joyrides are suicide missions, and that diving is about dying. Emergency responders risk their lives on dangerous search and rescue missions. Mines and quarries are not playgrounds. They can kill you. Stay out and stay alive.
That's the news for tonight's edition of the County Line.
Be sure to tune in next week for your local news and sports coverage.
In the meantime, log on to WCN247.com for continuous coverage of your campus and your community. Good night.
Good night.
I don't care who you are, where you are. You see and hear something like this, you've got to get a few chills.